This case should never have been able to happen. It reveals an infuriating failure of the justice system, such a catastrophic failure that it triggered the loss of a beloved wife, daughter, friend and colleague. This is the case of Jill Meagher. Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome back to CASE Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Join the CASE family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Remember, choosing to be kind can save a life in many ways. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me. Our love and respect goes out to those that knew and loved Jill and all those affected by this case. On the 30th of October 1982, Jill Meagher, then Jill Meagher, was born in Drada, Ireland. Jill was a small-town girl growing up in Termonfeckin, a village with less than 1,600 people. When her father George got a job in Australia, she moved to Perth with her parents and her brother Michael. The new country wasn't a problem for Jill. She was a small-town girl with a big personality. She was really bright, bubbly and so gorgeous, said a school friend. She moved back to Ireland in 1996 to round off her education, graduating eventually from the University of Dublin with a Bachelor of Arts degree. Jill was going places, anyone who knew her said so. Jill was always a life of the party, always had a smile on her face. She was always full of fun, always had something to say, and she was very intelligent. She met her husband Tom while at university and the two relocated to Melbourne, Australia, Brunswick to be exact. Jill and Tom got a beautiful apartment on Lux Way. Life was going well. She became a unit coordinator for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, or ABC. There she was considered a rising star. Despite a small 5'1" frame, Jill's personality packed a huge punch. She had a great group of friends at work, and they often took to the town for a few drinks after they finished. The night of September the 21st, 2012 was no different. It was a Friday night. Jill had gone out with a few friends from ABC to the Brunswick Green Bar on Sydney Road. After staying there for a while, they moved on to Bar Etiquette, a short walk away. It was a good night. They let their hair down, drinks were flowing and the group were in great spirits. As the night began to wind down, Jill decided to call it a night. She started walking back towards the flat on Lux Way that she shared with husband Tom at around 1:30 a.m. This should have been a 12-minute walk at most. She called her brother Michael on the phone as she walked. It was only a short call. They spoke about their dad. They spoke about what they could get him for his upcoming birthday. Neither of them were aware that this would be the last time that they would speak. Back at the flat, Tom suddenly woke up to realize that he was still alone. His wife was not by his side. Jill hadn't arrived home yet. Checking the time, it was now 4 a.m. And this just wasn't like Jill. Tom went out to search for his wife, but after checking everywhere he could think of and coming up short, he contacted the police. Jill was close to her family, and she was head over heels in love with her husband. She had great relationships with her friends. She wouldn't just stay out all night. Something wasn't right. As the news of her disappearance began to circulate, colleagues from ABC took to Twitter to get the news of her disappearance out. Friends, family and strangers began to put up posters around Brunswick. A Facebook page called Help Find Jill Meagher was set up. Within just 5 days of the Facebook page being launched, it had received over 100,000 followers. On the 24th of September, a discovery was made. It was Jill's bag. It was found on Hope Street, just 7 minutes away from her home. After this discovery, the police weren't so sure that they were simply looking for a missing person anymore. To everyone's dismay, the case was handed over to homicide detectives. The very next day, officers had yet another breakthrough. an employee of the Duchess Boutique, a bridal store on Sydney Road, the same road where Jill and her friends had been that night, handed in some CCTV footage. The footage was less than ideal, largely obscured. It was filmed from inside of the shop, but it was still clear enough to change the course of the investigation in one fell swoop. In the footage, a man in a blue hoodie could be seen walking around suspiciously outside of the shop. The man could be identified as Caucasian. He looked like he was up to no good. 4 minutes later, the same man was back, but this time with Jill. She can be seen talking to him and showing him something on her mobile phone. This was the last known sighting of Jill Meagher. With her phone clearly in her hand, police traced its movements that evening. In the footage, Jill is just a stone's throw away from her home, around 7 minutes. When the police tracked the phone's movement, triangulation shows her phone moving at speed down the freeway. So how does she get from a 7-minute walk away from her flat to being in a car hurtling down the freeway? Police used ANPR cameras to track down cars that were on the freeway at that time. Police then came to a horrifying discovery. They narrowed the cars down to just one that matched the triangulation of the phone, a car registered to a well-known and dangerous offender. 6 days after Jill Meagher vanished, the police made an arrest. On the 27th of September, Adrian Ernest Bailey, aged 41, was arrested at his home in Coburg for the intimate violation and ending of Jill Meagher. He was taken into custody where he underwent hours of interviews and interrogation.
Around 2:30 this afternoon, police arrested a 41-year-old man in the suburb of Coburg. Now that suburb is near the suburb of Brunswick. Now he was taken here to the St Kilda Police Complex, has been questioned all afternoon and all evening. He hasn't yet been charged with any offence, but the expectation is that he will be charged over the disappearance of Jill Meagher.
To the officer's surprise, Bailey confessed to everything. He recalled how he throttled Jill with his bare hands after violating her in a lane just off of Hope Street. 8 hours later at 10 p.m, he led officers to where her body had been left in a shallow grave on Black Hill Road. She was just weeks away from her 30th birthday. An amazing life cut tragically short.
The search for Jill Meagher has come to a tragic end, with her body found in a shallow grave here in Gisborne South, about a 40-minute drive from where she was last seen in Sydney Road, Brunswick. She was buried several metres off the dirt road under a tall leafy tree. Homicide detectives and forensic police have spent several hours examining the scene. It's a very remote area surrounded by paddocks and only accessible by dirt road.
There was another horrifying discovery. Ernest Bailey was on parole when he ended Jill's life. Shockingly, following his arrest, Ernest's solicitor requested a suppression order be in place. This was to ban the publishing of any potentially damaging material about him. The request was granted. The horrifying reasons for the suppression order became quickly apparent. Jill was not Adrian Bailey's first victim. His known crimes date back to 1990, when an 18-year-old Bailey violated a friend of his sister. Just 1 month later, he struck again, attempting to do the same to a girl 1 year younger than himself. 4 months later, he attempted to do it again to another girl he picked up hitchhiking. He was charged and sent to prison in 1991 for these offences, serving just 22 months of a 5-year sentence. He would later admit that he had cheated the system, simply going through the motions of rehabilitation. This man did not want to change. Officially, everyone believed he was no longer a danger to society, but he knew otherwise. And he admitted during a court appearance to forcing himself on another 5 women over a 6-month period in 2001. For this, he was jailed once more for 11 years, but again he served just 8 years of this sentence before being released in 2010. Clearly, he was a man set in his ways. When being interviewed following his crimes against Jill, he said, "I should be in jail anyway, you know. I shouldn't have been let out last time, simple. And I say that in the hope someone hears that and they don't ever let me out again. How many chances does a person need?" Shockingly, they really were his own words. At 2 a.m. on the 28th of September, Bailey was charged. An hour later, he had an out-of-session hearing that lasted for just 90 seconds. This time, there would be no bail. He was held on remand to await his trial. The gravity of the situation must have been weighing on Bailey. He tried to end his own life whilst in custody. There were still questions that Jill's husband, family and community needed to know. Why Jill? Why that night? Why did he carry out these actions in such a savage manner? He told a psychologist, Professor James Ogloff, that he had attempted to kiss and touch Jill outside of the Brunswick Lane bar. She didn't react the way that he wanted her to, or the way that he expected. Jill stepped back and slapped him across the face. But Bailey wasn't used to being told no. Her response had made his blood boil. He was now enraged. He saw red after she had rejected his advances. He dragged her into a nearby lane and forced himself on her. However, Jill was a fighter, and she knew she was just 400 meters from home. After the assault, she hit him with her mobile phone and threatened to call the police. Bailey, however, responded by throttling her until no longer breathing. He was in too deep and panicking. He drove home, collected a shovel, and then returned to the scene of the crime. He dragged her into his car and drove to Ginzburn South. Here, he dug a shallow grave and attempted to bury her. When the news broke about everything that had happened to Jill Meagher, the community was devastated. Shortly after the body was found, the Australian flag at the ABC South Bank studios was flown at half-mast as a sign of respect. Part of a statement on the ABC website read, Jill was a much-loved member of the local radio family. She was witty, intelligent, and great company. Jill was an innocent victim, a young, vibrant woman with her whole life in front of her. There were visuals, marches, and thousands of bouquets of flowers. They were left both to offer condolences and to try and promote changes for a safer community. But the reaction wasn't all positive. After Bailey had been charged, various Facebook users began to create pages about the case. As some of them were openly hostile towards Bailey, the Victoria Police tried to unsuccessfully have them taken down. This was to prevent any potential jurors being impacted or swayed by social media coverage. Jill's husband Tom also backed these calls to have them removed. Chief Commander Ken Lay condemned Facebook for not taking down the post, saying, "When you see the hatred that's incited on some of these sites, it is very much the antithesis of what we saw yesterday with 30,000 people taking to the streets, saying, let's try and make this a safer and fairer community." On the 5th of April 2013, Bailey pleaded guilty. During a pre-sentence hearing, victim impact statements were read out. The devastation was immeasurable. Her widower Tom said, "What was stolen from us on September the 22nd, 2012 was love, my best friend and my entire world. I think of the waste of a beautiful mind and a brilliant soul. I am half a person because of this crime." During this hearing, Bailey's lawyer said that he understood he deserved a life sentence and that he was remorseful. Prosecutors hit back, arguing that as he attempted to conceal the crime, this proved that he wasn't sorry for his actions. If he was sorry, would he have gone through the troubles of knowingly digging a shallow grave? During this hearing, the suppression order was also lifted, allowing for his extensive history of violence to be revealed. The courtroom at the Victoria Supreme Court was packed out. The public gallery was full. The media was in a full frenzy. Bailey's lawyer had tried to argue that Bailey had borderline personality disorder, that he was an alcoholic who had been intimately violated as a youth. But the judge was having none of it. When sentencing him, Justice Nettle said that Adrian Bailey was a deviant, and that he either ended Jill because she threatened to call the police after he assaulted her, or because the idea of snuffing her out was arousing. I quote, "You were larger and stronger than she, and you used that physical advantage to dominate her. In effect, you dragged her off the street late at night, while she was peacefully going about her business business within a stone's throw of her home. Throughout his sentencing, Bailey stared down at the floor, only looking up once his sentence was handed down. For someone that was remorseful, he wasn't great at showing it. On the 19th of June 2013, Adrian Ernest Bailey was sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 35 years. Following this high-profile case, Victoria's parole system underwent a massive overhaul. This was directly as a result of what happened to Jill. Dennis Napthine, Victoria's premier, explained, "There is no doubt that the system failed Jill Meagher. Under the changes we've already introduced, the offender would have been back in jail, not on the streets. Our actions are the minimum we can do to try and make sure this never happens again." Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? What do you think could be done to avoid something like this happening again? Let me know down in the comments. Please do hit like if you appreciate what I'm doing here. Thank you to everyone in the Dark Case crew. You too can become a channel member for just 99 pence. A huge thank you to my patrons. Your support makes a huge difference. You too can support my work and be thanked in every video for just $5 per month. So a huge thank you to Rachel David, Kathy Green, David James, Addy Alexander, Karen Jones, El Palmieri, James Harrington, Shane Woodward, Faster River, Stacey Krogerus, Summer Chambers, Mona Corona, Cepheid Variable, Anthony Watson, Jason Coward, Guardian Paler, Jeremy Sebranek, and Darlene. Be careful out there and I'll see you soon.